One set, Councillor Petal Benoit. Of course, we are going to speak to a number of issues, and we want to welcome you, ma'am. And I like the attorney attire look, black and white and tunic and all. Well, not tunic, what do you call the bib sort of look? It's not but anyway, you look attorney-ish this morning. However, all right, so we're dealing with laws and matters, right? And let's jump straight into it. The THA, or the Chief Secretary, said he is within the law treating with the adjustment in the Tourism Secretary's portfolio, the positions. The portfolio is a long one. It's the tourism, transport, antiquities, and culture. I might have mixed it up, but that's basically. And he bust it down the middle and he said, look, I'm going to shift you based on the law, and he's within his rights to do so. From an opposition position, the public is looking on and saying something is wrong here. What are your responses to that adjustment?
Yes. Good morning, Brother B. Good morning, Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, wherever you are. It's really good to be here this morning. Brother B, you indicated that something is not too well at the Division of Tourism. And the Chief Secretary, yes, is within his right to decide who shall be the secretary of a particular division. But what we are saying is what the Chief Secretary would have done has created an administrative nightmare, so to speak. And I want to take Tobagonians and all the public through what would have transpired. And it is our view that what the Chief Secretary did last, he should have done first. So if we recall, on the 18th of September, a press release came from the Office of the Chief Secretary indicated that Assemblyman Hackett had a temporary responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. And there was no end date to when this temporary will conclude. Then, and she will have those responsibilities from the 15th of September. So we would have gotten the notice some days after she actually assumed the temporary responsibility. Then in the House on the 25th, and of course when that very vague press release came, everybody wondered what is happening to Councillor Boris. Is Councillor Boris unwell? Is Councillor Boris on vacation? Is Councillor Boris fired? What is really happening? Then in the House on the 25th, there were a number of questions posed to Councillor Boris. Assemblyman Duke, in his posing of his questions, asked, because there was no information in the public domain that Secretary Boris has resumed duty and she has resumed as the Secretary of Tourism. So Assemblyman Duke asked the question if she is still the Secretary. And she stood in the House in the affirmative and said that she is still the Secretary of the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. Lo and behold, less than 24 hours after, we saw a press conference, and the moderator of the press conference was introducing Secretary Hackett as Secretary with responsibility for culture and antiquities. And of course, hearing from Councillor Boris the day before, to now see this unfolding in the public domain, there was more public discussion. What is really happening? Is Councillor Boris still the Secretary? Is Councillor Boris fired? What is this administrative nightmare that is unfolding? And then, of course, a couple of days after, we hear the Chief Secretary coming and explaining that he would have issued written correspondence to both Councillor Boris and Assemblyman Hackett, indicating that their new responsibilities temporarily assigned to Secretary Hackett, Culture and Antiquities, and Secretary Boris, Tourism and Transportation. But the question remains, who is really the Secretary of the division? So currently we have two secretaries or in division rather, two secretaries in the division, but the THA Act, Section 37, also provides for a secretary who shall have general direction and control over the division. So which of the secretaries currently have general direction and control of the division? And we have already seen the lines being blurred, because although Secretary Hackett is responsible for transportation, in that press conference, Councillor Boris, responsible for transportation, in that press conference, we saw Assemblyman Hackett speaking to the issues of transportation, and she indicated on the beckoning of the Chief Secretary, she spoke to the Transport Minister, she spoke to the Minister of Public Utilities and Leader of Government Business, and she also spoke to the Minister of Finance with direct responsibility. So we could see already the nightmare that could be created. And what about the departments that do not currently fall under either? What about the accounting department? What about the HR department? Who is given general direction and control over the division? And we cannot take for granted that Secretary Boris is still in charge, because based on the information, she is a secretary in the division with responsibility for 2 portfolios, while Secretary Hackett has responsibility for the other 2, culture and antiquities.
Is it fair to assume that the 4 responsibilities split into 2 is fair, or is the direction guided by these 2 representatives? So Zarisha Hackett now would be responsible for culture and antiquities, while Councillor Boris would be responsible for tourism and transportation. So the question that they're asking about who is generally leading the charge for the entire division, the argument may be that, well, it's clear in terms of both the 2 responsibilities, the 4 responsibilities split into 2. Is that's not sufficient enough?
No, it's not clear, because who will staff go to on matters? And I said HR, like matters of HR. HR does not fall smack in terms of culture or culture and antiquities or tourism and transport, because they provide a service to the entire division. Similarly, accounting does not fall smack. And what about issues? Suppose an emergency occurs at the division. Who do you go to get that general direction and control? And there are several other departments that you can't have a clear delineation between culture and antiquities or transportation and tourism, because they service the division.
Right, but sometimes you may not want the secretaries to be too involved in the day-to-day operation of the company. Of the division, sorry.
Yeah, but there must be one that is providing general direction and control. Who is accountable? Who is responsible? And more than that, the Chief Secretary is disposing a lot of confidence in the Secretary of Education. But we have seen, of culture and but we have seen the Division of Education is also a large division. We have seen that there were issues in terms of school repair. We have seen schools throughout Tobago complaining that they have not been adequately repaired for the reopening of school. Currently, there are schools who are asking parents and students to assist with repainting the classrooms, purchasing paint, volunteering their services to provide an environment that is conducive for learning. We have also seen what is happening with the Tobago-centric curriculum. It is my information that the Division of Education, Research and Technology, the technology department has not yet materialized or functioned. Neither has the research department. So, there are a number of issues in education, and yet still we are taking that secretary to assist another secretary.
All right. So there has to be this question as to what would have led to this adjustment.
Yeah.
And this accommodation. The secretary who is now responsible, Zarisha Hackett, is saying it is more, or she's able, or the division has more advice or whatever is added or can help along with the whole question of the carnival activities. And this is where I want to go. I'm asking what would have led, based on yourself and your colleague, Mr. Morris, would have come to, or I don't say a conclusion, but would have recognized that something led to why this decision was made. In your estimation, you and your colleague want to sit down to decide who's going to go and try and shine to talk about this. you must have had some kind of conclusion as to what would have led to it. Let's hear from you.
No, we have been having discussions in the public domain, and of course, because this administration is not open and transparent with what is happening, they have left room for speculation among the public. And one of the speculations are we would have seen the launch of October Carnival earlier in September, and visibly absent were the stakeholders of Carnival. Carnival is no carnival without its stakeholders being Mass, Steel Band, and Calypso. And if there's an absence of the stakeholder, then it means that something is very wrong in that regard. And if you fast forward to when Secretary Hackett held the press conference, you saw all the stakeholders present. You saw the events people, you saw the Mass people, you saw the Steel Band people, and the Calypso people. So in the public's mind, there must be some issue in terms of relationships between Councillor Boris and the stakeholders. And why did they come out to the press conference and show their support when Secretary Hackett?
Right. So I made my own. Yes, right. So people are going to speculate. We can't escape from that. However, we saw evidence, as you have pointed it to, that may have led to one secretary being more popular than one, or more accommodating with stakeholders as opposed to the other. Now, there are certain positions in leadership that you have to take.
Yes.
This feeding frenzy that we've grown accustomed to when it's time for Carnival, the division may be responsible for a number of things. Like for example, trucks to varying mass bands and so on.
Yes.
However, there may be more demands that the secretary may not be may not agree to, that they go vex with and fall out for, and say to the chief secretary, we can't work with this secretary because she's not adhering to what we want. And in some cases, what they want is unreasonable, Ms. Petal Benoit. So let's speak to being in leadership, that you have to take harsh decisions, or decisions that would not be popular with your stewards. However, is the best decision for the entire entity to maintain some credibility at the end, because I have to give a financial report at the end of the day. And if I can account, and you talk about transparency and accountability, what if that is her position? And what if it is, and I'm saying what if because we're speculating.
Yes.
And so come to some rationale as to accommodate this decision. And is it that is a demonizing of the then Secretary of Tourism because she's not conforming to the wishes of the stakeholders? Or is it that her position is that, look, I have to account and this is my position? Come to that discussion, because there is where we come to a rationale that we can accept that this was not a butchering or not a vindictive move of any kind. It could be, and I want you to give your thoughts, when you're at that level of leadership, the position that you have to take for the better running of the institute or the entity.
Well, Brother B, what the Chief Secretary has done is indicate to the public that he has lost confidence in Councillor Boris. In terms of the way forward, if Councillor Boris decided that, and to me there should be some general policy direction among the executive, where are we going in terms of October Carnival, in terms of culture? And if that directive comes from a policy and a strategic point of view, it doesn't matter which secretary is in the position, because as an executive, as a Tobago House of Assembly, this is our vision for culture. This is our vision for Carnival in October. And whoever the secretary is to carry out the mandate of the Tobago House of Assembly in terms of its vision. So it is clear that there is no real vision, and it is clear that it depends on who is the secretary in charge, because if there was a vision, and a mandate, whichever secretary is responsible is supposed to carry out that vision and that mandate. So therefore, the accountability starts from the head. What is the vision for Carnival? It can't be that two different secretaries have two different visions.
Well, as he mentioned in the public on the public platform, Secretary Hackett would now be responsible for, until further notice,
yes,
for culture and activities, which Carnival would fall
yes,
under culture. So at least we have that answer.
And I also want to add, in the past, what would have happened is that the Division and Festivals Commission will be the oversight, but there were committees responsible for it. So there was a carnival committee, and then the stakeholders will be responsible. So in leadership, there's also negotiation. So the stakeholders may make a proposal, and based on your finite financial resources, you will know that you may not be able to accommodate, but you could go to a particular point. So is and that is what leadership is about. It's about negotiation. It's about selling your point of view. It's also about give and take. Mm-hmm. So you will be able to take, you will be able to give, and meeting at a point that is favorable to both parties. Mm-hmm. That is what leadership is about, Brother B.
All right. Okay, Ms. Benoit, I wish you had come here earlier because we barely scratched the surface. But it's a pleasure having you, and of course, we'll do this at another time.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here, and we got to leave it there. All right?
Thank you. It was really good being here.